Right, hello folks. So I'm coming back with something, well, as always, something different. Um, but I'm recording this video prior to a pretty major announcement that's going to go out later in this month, on the 30th of July from Historic England. So what I wanted to do, because I know what's going to happen with this, it's going to, it's going to get a lot of publicity online and it's going to get shared around a lot and there's going to be a lot of interest in this. And what I want to do is just use this opportunity to highlight what's actually happened, and also set the record straight in terms of responsibility for the great piece of news that's going to be announced later this month. So I thought what I want to do, because I know what's going to happen. This is going to end up getting, it's going to be really popular online, in particular on the various pillbox groups, and I can see this success being attributed to people and groups who had nothing to do with it. So what I want to do is kind of like get in there before this happens and set the record straight and show what the process was for for what's going on. So this is going to be a video looking at a listing application that I submitted back in 2022. I found out this week that the application was successful. So over 3 years later, which is kind of what you expect with listing applications, they take a long time to sort out. And kind of like an ensuing surprise. So I got a notification. When was it? I got an email through on the 7th of July, 2025, saying that the application I'd submitted had been successful, and I was really pleased about that. And then over the next coming hours and the next couple of days, I got about 4 other emails saying that various other things had been listed as a result of this, which came as a massive, massive surprise. So, given that this video is going to be releasing on the 30th, I can kind of like reveal what happened in the video, and I'm massively pleased as a result. I'm on leave this week as well, so everything always comes through when I'm meant to be taking a break, but I had to just get in there and record this video. So let me just quickly set up my various bits and pieces. Okay, so on the 18th of March 2022, I submitted an application for a listing to get a First World War pillbox near North Walsham listed. So this pillbox has been known about for a very long time, which I'll talk about later. But I conducted a site visit with my mate Steve Smith, who knows the area very well. He lives quite locally, and we spent a day kind of taking a look at the landscape, having a look at the surviving pillboxes, just as part of out of interest, and it's to get me having a look at this area and showing Steve what's going on in terms of the landscape. And we learned a shed load of stuff. So part of this visit was to take a look at this unique semicircular First World War pillbox near Bacton Wood in North Walsham. And following a basic walkover survey of the site, photographic survey as well, I determined that this site was of national importance, so based on my experience, and that it should be applicable for listed status. So as a result of this, I compiled a listing application and submitted this like the day after, I think it was, with the site visit. And yeah, like I say, 3 years later, I found out that the application was successful, so it proves what I thought at the time. So what I want to do is use this as an opportunity to go through the issues that surround listing of First and Second World War pillboxes, which I'll cover in detail because there's a lot of rubbish, unfortunately, that surrounds the listing process. Not as a result of listing at all. The listing process itself is really straightforward, but there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about listing and who's responsible, etc., which I'll cover shortly. So I also just want to prove that today's date, when I'm recording this on the 10th of July, so this is 20 days before the announcement is made, just to kind of prove that I don't want people claiming that I didn't record this video. I recorded this video after the announcement. I didn't. This is like past historic Chris recording this video. So yeah, I heard on the 8th of July. So this is the email I got telling me that my application had been successful and the building's now the pillbox is now listed, and like I say, the announcement is embargoed until the 30th of July 2025. So Historic England will be making the announcement on that day. So where to start? Let's have a look at the issues. I'm just going to talk through the issues that surround the listing of, in particular, let's just use Second World War pillboxes as an example. So I'm just going to turn back to my face. Let me just stick that on. Right, that'll do us. So from my experience, so I've got over 20 years experience of the archaeological investigation and research of Second World War anti-invasion defence in the UK, as well as a bit of First World War as well. So in the throughout this 20 years of experience, I have engaged with and have experience of the listing process. So I was first involved in a listing application back in 2010 or 2009. This was with my my mate Andy, who lives in Keighley, and I think he contacted me. He contacted me and my other friend Andy Brockman for advice on getting this two-story pillbox at Steeton Dump near Keighley listed, and I popped out and did a site visit with him and showed him some bits and pieces and gave him some advice on what to kind of highlight in the listing application. And he did all the work. Got the pillbox listed, absolutely fantastic story, and that was what kind of like really sparked my kind of experience of the listing process. A couple of years later, in 2012, while I was working for Norfolk County Council's Historic Environment Service on secondment through the Council for British Archaeology's Community Archaeology Training Placement, we got notification that a Second World War, it's not auxiliary unit, special duty section out or sub-out station had appeared under a car park near Norwich, and we went out and took a look at that, and I did a listing application for that, and that was successful as well. So I've got quite a bit of experience of the listing process. I've also, what else? I was involved in the docking tech turrets. I provided advice to the Docking Heritage Group to get them listed, because I'd worked with them in the past in Norfolk. So yeah, and as a result of this, I've got a good idea of how the listing process works, how you apply it to Second World War pillboxes. Unfortunately, this experience is quite niche. There are very few people out there who have this experience of the listing process in regards to Second World War pillboxes. Peter Hibbs is another guy who's really good at this and has had quite a bit of success. But this doesn't mean that everyone has this experience or everyone knows what the listing process is. So from my experience with seeing people trying to get stuff listed online, let me just turn the display capture off. There are several issues that crop up time and time again, which often lead to, or not often lead, pretty much always lead to unsuccessful listing applications. So in general, there's a general lack of understanding of what listing is and how it works. There's also a massive misunderstanding about who is responsible for the listing building. So a lot of people seem to think it's English Heritage. English Heritage, at the time of me making this video, have not been responsible for the listing of buildings or scheduling of sites since 2015. So 10 years they haven't been responsible, but people still contact English Heritage trying to get stuff listed, even though a simple Google search will show you in England that it's Historic England that are responsible for the listing process. So even this basic information of who to contact to get something listed is largely unknown to many people as a result of not knowing what they're doing. They also have a misunderstanding of what listing actually is, what it actually achieves, what it does. So at the base level, generally listing is applied to buildings that are in use or general structures, and you get scheduled sites which are used for buildings and sites which aren't generally in use. It's a broad thing, but there's a bit of difference there. So listing will protect significant buildings and structures. There are different grades of listing. I'm not going to explain all this because all the information is online, and I'll point to this later. But sites can still get delisted. Something can lose its listed status at some point, and be demolished. It doesn't give you necessarily complete protection from demolition. But also, listing is specifically reserved for buildings and sites that meet very, very strict and detailed criteria, which are all outlined online. But this, again, people think you just that the listing process is literally just ticking a box on a bit of paper or in a database and then the building is listed. It is not as simple as that. So listing works, it's a multifaceted process. So to get something listed, the first things first is that someone actually needs to do something. Someone needs to submit a listing application, but also they need to submit a listing application which meets the criteria and the requirements for a listing application, which I'll cover in more detail. And that kind of brings me on to the next big issue with the listing process and stuff getting listed, and that is complacency. So I've seen this time and time again. I see this on an almost weekly basis on Facebook and elsewhere, and this is that very few people actually do anything. Most people do nothing. So there is this expectation that someone else will do it, a belief that groups on Facebook or elsewhere have a responsibility for this when they don't, and that generally people don't do anything or expect someone else to do it. There is also this tied in with a lack of communication with various heritage organisations, so your historic environment records, if you've got preservation groups, but most importantly, your national organisations such as Historic England, Cadw for Wales, Historic Environment Scotland. They keep on changing. I can never remember for Scotland. It's Historic Scotland. Sorry, I'm showing my lack of knowledge there. Outside of England. But very few people actually communicate with HERs or these national organisations to make it clear that there is an interest in the preservation of Second World War pillboxes as an example of Second World War sites. So most people just sit on Facebook and chat and moan on Facebook, and obviously these groups on Facebook have no responsibility for listing or preservation in any way. So the information goes nowhere. It's people shouting and moaning into an echo chamber, not making this useful communication with the organisations that have a responsibility for preservation at a local and national level, which again, I've seen this for over 20 years now. These are the main reasons why nothing gets done. People don't know what listing is, people do nothing, people expect other people to do it, no communication with organisations that have a responsibility for actual preservation. And also you seem to get a lot of people thinking that groups on Facebook and various other groups, I'm not going to name them, think that a lot of people seem to think that they have a responsibility when in reality they don't. These are just generally Facebook groups or groups of people with an interest with no actual responsibility or experience of heritage preservation. So I just need to get this out in the air. But yeah, there's a lot of reliance on groups that have no actual responsibility for the preservation of sites, and this is generally because a lot of people don't have this experience of the listing process or this awareness of heritage preservation, which not every, this is understandable. Not every member of the public is an expert in everything and doesn't necessarily know where to go. But also, if they contact people who also don't know what they're doing, then they're going to receive duff information and poor advice, which kind of leads me on to the next step. So whenever I see listing applications submitted, so generally the story goes, a site's been redeveloped, a pillbox is on this site, it's going to be demolished. So someone sees this, gets annoyed when the development takes place, at which point it's way too late. So at the point of JCBs and stuff turning up on site and diggers, that site, the application process for planning has been approved. It's generally too late. If that pillbox isn't recorded with the historic environment record, then it is going to have no consideration as part of the planning application. The HER have no power there to tell the developers to retain that pillbox. And again, this is another thing that pops up whenever a pillbox is preserved. The accolades and the credit always goes online to the the developer. So people go, oh yes, nice, the developer decided to save it. It's generally not the developer that wants to save these things. It is as a result of consultation with the historic environment record and the planning department that pillboxes get saved, but the credit never goes there. So generally when the JCBs are rolling on site, someone will pop up on Facebook and say, what can I do to save this? And people will say, oh, run to the newspapers and kick up a fuss, contact your local councillor, which again does nothing. The planning process has already been approved, and there's very little you can do to save the pillbox. And generally, someone will say, "Oh, try and get it listed." Well, at this point, it's too late to get something listed. As you've seen with this application, I submitted it in 2022, and it's been approved 3 years later. You can get fast track listing, but again, this is a rarity, and you also need to know what you're doing. So generally, people will try and get something listed when it's too late and something is at imminent risk. Next, you have trying to list something that doesn't meet the clear criteria. So this is a biggie. So the listing process is informed by a series of criteria that relate to very specific building types, site types. These criteria outline how something needs to meet these criteria for a listing application to have more chance of success. There's various criteria which I'll look at in a bit, but I think generally it's archaeological, architectural, historical significance. You need to, the site needs to tick one of these boxes, or at least, or as many of them as you can. So generally people try and get something listed which doesn't meet any of these criteria, generally because they don't know what they're doing, but also because this lack of awareness of the listing process. And then, the final thing is kind of a poor application. So time and time again, I'll see it on this mention on Facebook, it's like, Generally, an application will just consist of it's from World War II and is important. That does not work. That doesn't show how the site meets the various criteria for listing. It provides no analysis of how the site meets the required criteria. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's an opinion. Just because something is from the Second World War doesn't necessarily mean it's important. If you're not demonstrating this importance, then you're not going to get anywhere. It doesn't explain how or why the site meets the set criteria as outlined by Historic England. And also, I see this, it's from World War II and is important, come up on in relation to planning applications. So on planning portals, if someone submits, generally if groups online, people on Facebook submit a reason for a Second World War site not to be developed, it'll generally be it's from World War II and is important. It doesn't say that this is one site of two in the country and this is the best preserved example. It doesn't provide any quantifiable, I think that's the word, analysis of how the site is important. So generally, too late, trying to list something that doesn't meet the criteria, and poor applications. Either generally what happens online is that a listing application isn't successful because of one of these three, if not all three of them. Generally, it's a mix of all three. So that I see. And then when the application is turned down almost instantly by Historic England, then this is when we get the shouts of, oh, they don't care, or they're actively trying to destroy our World War II heritage and all this crap. The reality is the application was rubbish. The person didn't know what they were doing. The site wasn't listed. And this just constantly goes on and on and on. Whenever a site gets posted on Facebook on the various groups, this happens. People get duff advice. It's too late. Submit an application. The application is turned down. People get angry. And then also this has the adverse effect of stopping people from submitting information to Historic England and submitting listing applications because they've been led to believe that these organisations don't give a crap about wartime stuff, when in reality they clearly do if you talk to them. Right. That's my kind of little rant over. Let's have a look at where to go for information. Let's turn this into a positive. So I've had my little rant about the rubbish that people do. Contacting newspapers doesn't save sites. Getting in touch with your councillor doesn't save sites either. Getting in touch with your HR. So first place you should go for information to educate yourself. So the key thing here is to okay, right, I'm back. You'll have noticed there was a little awkward cut there. As many people know, I don't like to stop and edit because I can't be bothered. I like to do things in one go, but I got halfway through the video and kept on talking and realised I hadn't turned on my screen capture software. So you were just looking at a face. So after my little rant, I tried recording this again and then started coughing. So now I've got a drink. Should be able to avoid that. So the next step is to take a look at where to go for information about listing. As I mentioned already, very few people seem to know that Historic England is responsible for listing, and they'll go off to the local council and have a moan, or English Heritage, or the National Trust, etc., etc. Best place to go for information is to go to Historic England's website. So if you search Historic England for, obviously this only covers England. If you search for Historic England listing, then you'll find their guidance. For the rest of the UK, listing is covered by CADU for Wales, Historic Environment Scotland, and the Department for Communities in Northern Ireland. So there are various organisations. If you're in Wales, Scotland, or Northern Ireland, check out the relevant guidance because each country is slightly different. But we're going to be looking at England because that's where I've got most experience with. So Historic England's website provides you with all the information you need to have a successful, or to implement and complete a successful listing application. Everything is explained really nicely. It's really nice and concise. I really do like how this information is presented. I'm dyslexic, so I sometimes struggle with reading, but I don't find the way the information is outlined here too daunting to read, and it doesn't start getting messed up. The yellow background's a bit funny, but yeah. Anyway, so I'm not going to read all this out. Check it out yourself. The first thing if you want to have a successful listing application is to educate yourself. You need to understand the listing process. You need to understand what it is, what it does, what it doesn't do. You also need to understand that a site needs to meet set criteria, which I've already explained. Most importantly, you need to understand how these criteria apply to the site that you're trying to get listed or scheduled. I'm just going to keep on using listed from now to cover all bases. Something I just missed out is there are various forms of protection. So you've also got scheduled monuments and registered parks and gardens. Scheduled monuments generally covers areas of landscape and buildings which aren't in use as a broad thing. Anyway, parks and gardens is quite obvious. So as I've already mentioned, there are set criteria that a building needs to meet for a listing application to be successful. These criteria are different for various types of buildings, as we'll see in a second, and you need to read through these criteria and understand the criteria to assess whether your site or structure meets the required criteria for a successful listing application. So this is explained here. Generally, there are three broad criteria that a site needs to meet. These are special historic interest, special architectural interest, and the special archaeological interest, which doesn't seem to be outlined on here. But anyway, those are your three things. So your site needs to either meet the criteria for historic interest, architectural interest, or archaeological interest, either one or all three, or a mixture of the two. Ideally, you want to try and make sure that your site hits more than one. Ideally three if possible, but that's not always possible. Right, so yes, there are various criteria. So let's just click on this. Oh no, that's the really detailed stuff. So principles of selection for listed buildings is worth having a read through this. I haven't read that in a while. It's last updated this year. I need to read that. But we need to have a look at this guidance. No, that's not the one I'm after. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up now. Listing selection guides is what I was after. So you click on that. This will bring you to this page here, which outlines the various selection guides for each building type. So as I mentioned, various site and building types have their own selection criteria. In this case, we're mainly interested in military structures. We're going to use Pillbox as an example. So yeah, military structures here. So if we click on, so you've also got maritime and naval buildings, but if we click on this, it takes us through to the listing selection guide for military structures, which I've already downloaded here. I've already searched for pillboxes, which before I previously stopped recording. So this is the document. This app provides your guidance to military structures and how various military structures, thanks for that, should meet various criteria. In this example, we're using pillboxes. So I'm going to say this straight off the bat. As a specialist in Second World War pillboxes, I don't believe the selection criteria for pillboxes is adequate. I don't believe it covers effectively things like landscape context of individual pillboxes, and certainly doesn't cover things like variations in design. So I can see that this is pretty much based on the outmoded methodology that, pillboxes were built to 7 or 8 different known types, and that's it. The reality is many pillboxes differ significantly from these range of designs. The process of designing pillboxes also didn't rely solely on these known types, and as a result there are a vast number of unique and potentially unique localized designs of national, if not local, importance that require recording, identification, and documentary research. But because very few people do any such detailed recording, this still needs to be realised, and it's something I'm working on, and hopefully we'll be working on in the future to get this identified. But this little section here relates directly to pillboxes, and it outlines quite effectively that from Historic England's perspective, the key things that will make a pillbox listing application successful are special interests, so including rarity of type, group relationship with other defensive structures, and survival and their built form. So group relationships, if you've got a group of pillboxes and slit trenches in an area that represent perfectly how an area was to be defended, that's a tick. Survival, so whether a pillbox is the last surviving example of its type. This is why localized designs need more recording rather than trying to lump everything into limited types. Relationship with other defensive structures, as I've said, so you've got this relationship with slit trenches, tank traps and all this stuff, anti-tank obstacles more correctly. Built form is very similar to survival, so you can argue that this pillbox is a unique type, but if you can tie that in with is it the only surviving example of its type, then you kind of killing two birds with one stone there. We also have additional criteria as well, such as relationships to earlier defences can be a key indicator as well, which is really interesting. A big one that Historic England have been going off on with is unique camouflage types. So surviving camouflage schemes are relatively rare and quite interesting, but they seem to be the key focus of a lot of listing applications or successful applications. This thing here, so this is a key point. So the reason why many listing applications fail is because, as perceived by Historic England, yes, considerable numbers of them survive. So as a result, there needs to be a lot of discretion as to using their selection. But my point always is, yes, a lot survive, but each pillbox is unique in terms of its landscape context. Also, you can't build two pillboxes in exactly the same way. There's going to be some variation in how a pillbox is constructed, for example. These are key points that need to be better understood. But as a result of this, Historic England are less likely to select a pillbox if it's very, if it's identical to other examples and doesn't have this these clear, special interest criteria. So any justification needs to show clearly how a pillbox functioned as part of a key defensive line or nodal point. Again, if you're just putting it's from World War II and is important, it doesn't cover that, funnily enough. Also make it very clear where original fittings survive. Again, internal signage, painted aids, to our recognition, again, are all key points. So have a read through this, understand it. Your key things for a pillbox in this example is group value, relationship to other examples, unique, built form, survival. And also then key bonus points are if you can justify how it was part of a local defensive line, which I think kind of ties in with, from my perspective, ties in with your group interest and group relationship. And then highlight fittings, surviving fittings. Right. So these are the key places to go. Educate yourself, learn the process, learn how to identify whether a site meets these criteria, and most importantly, do something. Do something before something becomes at risk, not when something comes at risk. So with all that in mind, then the next step is to sign up to Historic England's website, fill out the form. I'm not going to cover that because I've only just remembered that, and I can't be bothered logging in, but the listing process itself, filling in the documents and the forms, is quite straightforward. Right, what we're going to come to next. I think next we're going to take a look at the application that I submitted for the pillbox in North Walsham that was successful. So let's start with, I think it's worth covering how long this took me. So as I've already mentioned, I have a lot of experience of the listing process. I generally know what I'm doing. In this example, when I went out with my mate Steve, I thought it would be a good idea, because it's the first time I've decided to do this, I thought it'd be a good idea to keep a record of how much time this has taken me to do the process, because I've never thought of doing that. And I just wanted to make it kind of clear how, if you know what you're doing, you can bash out a listing application, a successful listing application, in very little time. So we spent about 30 minutes on site undertaking a walkover and photographic survey of the pillbox. I spent 20 minutes making a simple bullet point plan outlining, what key points I wanted to hit. And then I started, oh god, that was really late. I created my photographic record at night for some reason, so I spent 20 minutes creating a photographic archive. Right, key thing here is a lot of people seem to think that if you take a photo of a pillbox, that aids preservation some way. It doesn't. If you take a photo of a pillbox, it's just a photo of a pillbox. You need to create a photographic record of that image. So you need to show, you need to write what the image shows, which direction the image is taken and when it was taken. If you're not doing that, then you've just got a photograph. That is of very little use to anyone. And there is unfortunately this massive belief online in particular that if you take 100 photos of a pillbox, you're somehow preserving sites. It doesn't matter how many photographs you take. If you're not doing a photographic record to tell other people what that photograph shows, then essentially you're wasting your time. You can have taken thousands of photos of pillboxes, but that information is useless to anyone else unless you are properly archiving and documenting your photographic record. Right. So after I'd done that, I also got started on the written application. I don't know why I was doing this at night. I can only assume I was not sleeping very, very well at the time. This was 3 years ago as well. My sleeping pattern changes all the time. So after 20 minutes, I got my photographic record completed, and then I spent a good 25 minutes, is that? Yeah, writing the application. Then the next day, bit earlier in the morning. I spent then about 7 hours writing the application, uploading the application to Historic England's website. Yeah, which took me, so writing the application took about 7 hours, and then to upload the record and all the photographs took me about 45 minutes. So to get this site, this pillbox listed, took me 9 hours and 5 minutes, which I don't think is too bad. Just out of like petty competitiveness, I do kind of want to bring that down to like see how how quick I can get a pillbox listed successfully. But anyway, that's something that yeah I don't necessarily need to do. Right, let's have a look at the application itself. So this is my raw document. You'll see this is the bullet point plan that I did. I ticked off everything as I went along to make sure that I covered all the required criteria. I had a grid reference for the pillbox because when you submit your application, you need to have the location. And here is my text. So you can see this is a bit more in depth than it's from World War One and is important. So this is the First World War pillbox we're looking at. But what I've done as I go along, I've highlighted the broad criteria, so historic interest. I've also pointed to the additional criteria with the reference points there as well. So I can't remember if they're in here or where those are. So it was a while since I've done these. 2.4, yeah, here we go. So I've also linked back to the descriptions in here as also specific considerations. Read this section. So to make it clear what points I'm trying to hit, I've also linked back to the points in the document to make that abundantly clear. So I've hit with this historic interest, archaeological interest, architectural interest. So I've hit all three of those main criteria. What I will do is publish this on the UK Second World War Heritage website for future reference. Yeah, I also did a basic measured survey, included some documents which I've taken out because I had copyright permission from the owner of these to use them in very selected ways, and I'm not publishing those online without permission. And then my photographic archive as well. So this little document is all that I needed to get this pillbox listed. Like I say, keeping track, you might find a different way of working. This is how I work. So I just did my bullet point plan, outlining what points I wanted to hit, what observations we'd made during the photographic survey. Then I went through and made sure that I outlined effectively how the pillbox meets the various criteria for historic interest, including period and local and national significance. Another key point is that I referred and provided references to published materials such as books, reports, and the like. Again, vitally important to show that you are backing up what you are saying with quantitative data. So I'm not just saying this pillbox is important because it is from World War One and it is nice and it is made of reinforced concrete blocks. I'm saying that this pillbox is unique, and this is clarified by this person and this person. The Norfolk Historic Environment Record also shows that this pillbox is unique, for example. So I'm backing up everything I say with data, with something that I can use to prove what I'm saying. In terms of archaeological interest, I think I did a bit about how the pillbox is an uncommon shape. It's the only one of its time. There's a clear connection between the pillbox and its landscape. The embrasures themselves clearly conform to the landscape and the road it was set to defend. Also summarised that the pillbox is potentially this unique shape given the unique shape because of the landscape it was built in. All this information I just know now is going to get copied and repeated by other people who never thought of this in bloody selves. But this is one of the things, I need to get this information out there, and I want to get this information out there, but I bloody hate plagiarists and people who try to pass themselves off as experts based on other people's work. Anyway, and then architectural interest. So key point here that I made was construction/technology of the time. Pillbox design developed significantly during the First World War and into the Second World War. So I've summarised that. Rarity, key shape. So, again, referencing published works, mentioning the local HER who also say it's unique. And the key thing here is, so as I mentioned earlier, I think I've been talking for a long time now. As I mentioned earlier, a key point with this site was its site significance and group value. And this is where this kind of application kind of snowballed. So, like I say, I submitted one application, and then Historic England have taken it upon themselves to go ahead and bulk list all the other surviving First World War pillboxes that meet the criteria. key thing I want to make clear is how, I outlined that this pillbox was part of a wider defensive network, and how this pillbox is key to that defensive network. And this then gave Historic England the opportunity then to do a bulk listing project, which I didn't think of. I just wanted to get this one pillbox listed off the bat. And funnily enough, last month I contacted Norfolk HER about the potential for bulk listing the River Ant pillboxes, and Historic England were one step ahead. But this shows the importance of making sure that your application shows this group interest, even if you're submitting a single pillbox, because it might have this unintended result of ensuring bulk listing of other pillboxes. Before I go on, I am going to have to clarify what bulk listing is as well. So a lot of people say, I see this all the bloody time, that, all pillboxes should be listed, and it's like, as I've already mentioned, listing is not a box ticking exercise. Someone doesn't just go and tick a box and that's all pillboxes listed. Every single pillbox, to be applicable for bulk listing, would have to meet the criteria. They don't just tick a box and that's it. Every pillbox, if you're submitting a bulk application, all of those pillboxes will need to be assessed for or demonstrated for how they meet the criteria. And if they don't get listed status. Although I wasn't involved directly, I know people who were involved in the England-wide project to list war memorials. So I know a couple of people locally who were involved in the process for doing that, and what they had to do was they were given a list of pillboxes, list of war memorials, and they had to assess how the war memorials met the criteria. It was a massive job, but it showed that bulk listing isn't as simple as just going, these pillboxes are all important. You have to demonstrate, and it has to be shown how they meet the criteria, which is how this application had this knock-on effect of leading to bulk listing of the River Ant pillboxes. So Historic England clearly saw that they were a cohesive and important national group of national significance, and took it upon themselves to go out there and assess these pillboxes and list the ones that meet the criteria. It's not just a thing of just going, all these pillboxes are important, list them all, because that's not how listing works. And whenever I see that online, I just instantly know that the person saying it has no idea what listing is or how it works. Anyway, little ranty time. But yeah, I found with this one, I find it really useful to refer directly back to these criteria to making sure that I was ticking every box. I also kept a list of my sources, so web sources, HER sources, books, other sources, so the listing criteria themselves, the Homefront Legacy database where this guy worked on it, and all that. Next step, I found it useful to do a little plan just to show the form of the pillbox, to show visually that it's this unique shape. This is not to scale, but it didn't take me very long to do. It was just some basic measurements I took on site, and that worked as well. That was quite useful. Yeah, documents have provided those, but won't be sharing those. And here's the photographic record. So, as I mentioned, if you take a photograph of a pillbox, it's just a photograph, unless you are describing what the photograph shows. So, this here shows, it clearly outlines the date the photo was taken, orientation of the elevation I've taken the photos of, general condition at time of survey, and I took the image facing south. I've got detail of north-facing embrasures. So these are the captions that I've provided. If you're not providing captions for your images, then you are just taking photographs, nothing else. You're not creating a record. You are not creating an archive. You are not doing anything. You are just taking photos of pillboxes. I'm just going to get that out there. I think I got banned from the Pillbox Appreciation Society for saying that, but anyway, I'll probably, I won't be getting let back on there again anytime soon for no reason. But again, the aim of the photographs is to show condition, is show these original fixtures and fittings. Yeah. And that's it. That is what led to the application that led to this pillbox getting listed, and unexpectedly the rest of the pillboxes on this defensive stop line getting listed as well. So, what am I doing? So this has been quite a long video. Like I said, I will provide this online. I'm going to stick some watermarks on it or something, because I don't want someone nicking my images. But yeah, I will make this available to help inform, make it more clear what listing is and how listing works, and hopefully more people get the backside into gear and do something rather than sitting and moaning on Facebook. The process of listing is it's not very complex once you get your head around it and get a bit of experience. I think the main thing is you just have to accept that your application might not be successful, and that's what happens. You know, I've had, I think, how many have I done now? 8, and I've had one still in consultation. I've had 3 turned down, so I've got about 50-50 chance of getting a pillbox listed. One of them was turned down for very spurious reasons, which I don't agree with, but I'm going to go for local listing instead. But that's an aside. The most important thing is educate yourself, do something, identify pillboxes and other defences that meet the criteria, and don't sit back and moan on Facebook. You know, do something. And this is the result of what can happen. This clearly shows that Historic England have an interest in this. All they need is people to communicate and submit applications, and then who knows, you might get an application where you submit one pillbox and then an entire defensive line gets listed as a result. Who knows? You don't know if you don't do anything. Anyway, I hope that's been useful. Yeah, that's me ranting. It was me that did this, no one else. Just remember that when this releases. I'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye.